All right, let's dive right in. Today we're heading into the dark, shadowy streets of 19th century St. Petersburg. We're going to explore a question, a really dangerous question, posed by a desperate ex-student who thought the answer could change everything. So here it is. This is the question that beats at the very heart of Fyodor Dostoyevsky's masterpiece, Crime and Punishment. It's a moral maze that one young man decides to solve, not just with his brain, but with an axe. And to understand why he would do that, we have to start with his shocking theory. You see, to get a handle on the crime, you first have to understand the idea that sparked it. And it's an idea that honestly splits the entire world in two. So, let's meet our guy, Rodion Raskolnikov. He's brilliant, he's proud, and he is trapped by poverty in this tiny, coffin-like room. He's had to drop out of university, and in that isolation, his mind starts cooking up this powerful and frankly terrifying philosophy. Here's the theory in a nutshell. Raskolnikov convinces himself that humanity is basically divided. You've got your ordinary people, the masses, who have to follow the rules, but then you have the extraordinary ones. Think Napoleon. He argues these people aren't bound by the same moral laws as the rest of us. In fact, they have a right, maybe even a duty, to step over obstacles or even bodies to achieve some great goal that helps all of humanity. So for Raskolnikov, this is way more than just a robbery. It's an experiment. He picks his target, a mean old pawnbroker who he sees as a parasite. He figures her death would be a net positive for the world, right? But the real test, the real reason he's doing it, is to prove to himself that he is one of the extraordinary ones. Of course, this is where theory slams into reality, because when the pawnbroker's gentle sister, Elizabetta, walks in at the worst possible moment, the experiment just spins horribly out of control. Now, to really get inside Raskolnikov's head, we have to look past the pages of the book. We have to look into the life of the man who created him, a life that was defined by a single moment where he stood face to face with his own death. You see, Dostoevsky didn't just write his novels. He poured his own life into them. His characters' veins practically pump with his own blood. So to truly get why Raskolnikov is so tormented, we have to understand the intense pressure that forged Dostoevsky's mind. And what a life it was. I mean, it was just filled with tragedy. His father was murdered. He was arrested for political activity. And it all leads to this one single defining event of his life in 1849. A death sentence. Just try to imagine this. You're standing in Semyonov Square in St. Petersburg. It's freezing cold. You've heard your sentence read aloud. A priest has given you the last rites. The first group of your friends are being tied to the posts. You're next in line. And you believe, with every fiber of your being, that you have exactly 1 minute left on this earth. 1 minute. 60 seconds to live. What goes through your head? How does your entire world, your ideas about God, about justice, about humanity, how does it all change when you stare death right in the face? And then a horn sounds. A messenger gallops in. The Tsar has spared their lives. The whole thing, the entire execution, was a sham. It was a cruel piece of psychological theater, a terrible mise-en-scène put on by the Tsar to teach them a lesson. That moment didn't just save Dostoevsky's life. It completely redefined it. So how does a person even begin to process that kind of trauma? Well, Dostoevsky took that moment and all the years he spent after it in a Siberian prison, and he turned it into a revolutionary way of looking at the human soul. His great artistic breakthrough was this idea he called ikalik, or duality. He saw that every single person is a walking contradiction, a constant battle between good and evil, belief and doubt. He believed that inside every one of us, there's both a saint and a sinner fighting it out. And Raskolnikov? He is the poster child for this. I mean, on the one hand, he is a cold-blooded killer who plans a murder with chilling intellectual precision. But on the other, he is so full of compassion that he'll impulsively give his last few coins to a poor family he doesn't even know. He's both the monster and the martyr, all in one person. You'd think a Siberian prison camp, surrounded by actual murderers, would be the last place to find hope. But that's where Dostoevsky found faith. The only book allowed was the Bible, and he was completely moved by the simple, powerful faith of his fellow inmates, like a man named Ali, who basically boiled it all down to this one core message. And that became Dostoyevsky's great rebuttal to theories like Raskolnikov's. He came to believe that true salvation, real greatness, it doesn't come from some prideful idea that sets you above everybody else. No, it comes from humility, from sharing in suffering, and from a faith that connects you to all of humanity. And this is the exact path Raskolnikov ends up on. His theory brings him nothing but misery. He's crushed by guilt. The only glimpse of hope he gets is when he finally breaks down and confesses to Sonia, a young woman who has suffered more than anyone but still holds on to her faith. When she reads him the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead, it's not just a story, it's a roadmap showing him the way out of his own spiritual grave. So this brings us all the way back to the title itself. What did Dostoevsky really mean by crime and punishment? Well, the answer probably isn't what you think.
When you hear the title Crime and Punishment, you're probably thinking about courtrooms and prison sentences. But for Dostoevsky, the labor camp in Siberia is almost just a footnote in the story.
Because the real punishment was internal. It was the fever, the delirium, the suffocating paranoia. It was the absolute isolation he felt after he used that axe to sever himself from the rest of humanity. The theory that was supposed to make him extraordinary, all it did was build the walls of his own personal hell. The punishment wasn't handed down by a judge. It was carried out by his own conscience. So the verdict on the experiment is in, and it was a complete, catastrophic failure. Far from proving he was some Napoleon, the crime and the guilt that followed proved he was just a man, bound by the same moral laws as everyone else. The novel's powerful conclusion is that real greatness isn't found in being above it all. It's found in connection, in compassion, in being human. Which leaves us with Dostoevsky's final, lingering question. Both he and his character had to journey through unimaginable suffering, one to a fake execution, the other through a self-made hell, to find any kind of grace. Does that mean we all have to? Is that the only path? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.